He thought he was fatherless, until a stranger's laugh disappeared and the truth showed up on a bank monitor. People in the lobby didn't even look twice at the kid when he walked in. That's what made the moment hit harder later. At first, he was just another face in the line at the First Meridian Bank in Toledo, Ohio, holding his aunt's hand like he wasn't sure if he should even be there. 8-year-old Jalen Reddick had on these oversized glasses that kept sliding down his nose and a backpack with one strap hanging lower than the other. You could tell it had been passed down more than once. His sneakers had the kind of wear that comes from running everywhere because the bus doesn't always show up. His aunt, Monique Jeffers, looked like she hadn't slept in a week. Her hair was pulled back, not for style, but because she didn't have time to think about anything except getting through the day. She worked overnight at a warehouse outside town, and sometimes an early morning like this meant she hadn't even gone to bed yet. "Baby, remember what we practiced?" Monique whispered, kneeling a little. Jalen nodded, clutching the worn debit card in both hands like it might fall apart if he loosened his grip. "Just ask to see my balance," he said quietly. "Exactly. Don't let nobody rush you. Take your time." They moved up in line. The place smelled like lemon floor cleaner and printer ink. A man in a suit nearby tapped his phone like every second wasted was costing him money. In a way, it probably was. That man was Sterling Hawthorne. People in town recognized him even if they'd never met him. Real estate, development, charity galas. His picture showed up in the local paper every few months. He wasn't mean-looking, just polished, like someone who always had somewhere better to be. He gave Jalen a quick glance, then went back to scrolling. When the teller called them forward, Jalen stepped up first. His voice wasn't shaky, but it was small. "Hi, I want to see my balance." The teller, Rachel and Gwen, smiled the way adults do when kids say something cute. "Of course. Do you have your card?" Jalen handed it over carefully, like it was glass. Monique placed a few papers on the counter, too. "His mother passed last year," she explained softly. "We're just trying to understand what's in his account. Nobody ever explained none of this." Rachel nodded, her expression softening. "I'm so sorry for your loss. Let me take a look." Sterling glanced over again, just enough to catch the moment Jalen pressed his chin against the counter, watching the screen like it might reveal a secret. Sterling let out a quiet breath through his nose, almost a laugh, not cruel, just amused. Maybe he was thinking the same thing everyone else assumed. A kid asking about a bank balance usually meant birthday money, maybe a few dollars from doing chores. But then something changed in Rachel's face. Her smile faded, not in a dramatic way, but like someone flipping a switch without meaning to. Her eyes flicked to the monitor, then back to Monique, then to Jalen. Give me just a moment," she said, standing up straighter. Monique looked confused. "Is everything okay?" Rachel didn't answer right away. She signaled for another employee, the branch manager, Clarence Duvall, who walked over with a calm, serious look. Sterling stopped scrolling. You could almost feel the room tighten, even though nothing had happened yet. Jalen's fingers curled around the edge of the counter. "Did I do something wrong?" Monique placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, baby. You good." Clarence leaned in, looking at the screen. His eyebrows lifted just slightly before he cleared his throat. "Ms. Jeffers, we're going to need to verify a few things. Would you mind stepping into one of our offices?" Monique blinked, thrown off. "For what? We just came to check the balance." Clarence hesitated, choosing his words. "There appears to be a significant amount in this account." Sterling stopped pretending not to listen. His phone lowered. People in line started paying attention without trying to. Jalen looked up at his aunt, eyes wide. "But I just wanted to know what's mine." Monique swallowed hard. "That's all we came for." Clarence opened the small gate and motioned for them to follow. Nobody was laughing anymore, not even Sterling. But the real shock hadn't even started yet. The office they were led into wasn't fancy. Just a small room with a window that looked out into the parking lot and a table that had been wiped down so many times the surface had lost its shine. Clarence closed the door gently, like he didn't want to draw attention, even though everyone outside already sensed something unusual was happening. Monique sat down slowly, still gripping her purse like someone might snatch it away. Jalen stayed standing beside her chair, his backpack sliding off one shoulder until he lifted it back up again. Rachel entered after Clarence and took a seat across from them. Her cheerful tone was gone, replaced with something careful. "Ms. Jeffers," she began softly, "there's a large balance connected to this account, much larger than what we typically see for a minor." Monique blinked twice. "Large how? Like a mistake?" Clarence folded his hands. "The amount is a little over 2.4 million. For a second, nobody made a sound. Even the clock on the wall seemed to stop. Jalen's mouth fell open just slightly, but he didn't speak. Monique leaned back like the air had pushed her. "That don't make sense," she said quietly. "We ain't never had that kind of money." Rachel slid the paperwork closer. "According to what's on file, this was set up as a trust by a man named Dorian Reddick about 8 years ago. Is that Jalen's father?" Monique exhaled through her nose, staring at the table. "He wasn't around. Left before Jalen was even born. Never sent a dollar. Never called. I thought he was dead, to be honest." Jalen lowered his eyes. He didn't ask questions. Not yet. He just pulled at the loose thread on his backpack strap. Clarence continued, "It appears the trust was never activated because certain documents were missing. Now that we've been notified of his mother's passing, the bank is required to update account access." Monique shook her head slowly. "Dorian didn't have that kind of money. He was working at a garage when I last saw him. I don't understand any of this." Rachel glanced at Jalen. "Do you have any relatives who might know more? Anyone who stayed in contact with him?" "No," Monique said sharply, then softened her voice. "Sorry, it's just, this is a lot." Jalen finally spoke. "So, it's mine?" His voice was quiet, but it filled the room. Clarence nodded once. "Yes, legally, the funds belong to you. But because of your age, there are rules. You can't use the money freely until—" "I don't want it for me," Jalen interrupted. "I just wanted to know." Monique rubbed his back gently. "Baby, why you so worried about money anyway?" Jalen hesitated, then looked at the floor. "Kids at school say stuff. I just wanted to see if I had anything." Monique's face tightened. Not angry, more like someone trying not to cry. "You don't gotta prove nothing to nobody." But before she could say more, there was a knock on the door. Sterling stood there. He wasn't smiling. He looked almost unsure if he should even be interrupting. "I'm sorry," he said, clearing his throat. "I couldn't help overhearing. I just wanted to check if everything is all right." Monique stared at him, surprised. "We don't know yet." Sterling nodded once and stepped inside only after Clarence motioned that it was okay. "I shouldn't have laughed earlier," Sterling said, looking directly at Jalen. "That was rude. I thought you were just asking about a few dollars. I didn't realize—" "It's fine," Jalen replied quickly, even though it clearly wasn't. Sterling sat in the chair near the wall, hands clasped loosely. He wasn't acting like the polished man from the lobby anymore, more like someone who couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just walked into something bigger than himself. "Dorian Reddick," Sterling repeated quietly. "I knew someone by that name years back, worked construction on one of my projects in Mansfield. Quiet guy, kept to himself." Monique's eyes widened. "You knew him?" "I wouldn't say knew," Sterling corrected. "We talked a few times. He disappeared one day. Nobody ever said why." Jalen swallowed. "Did he seem like he had money?" Sterling shook his head. "Not at all. That's what's confusing." The room fell silent again, but it wasn't the same kind of silence as before. This one had weight to it, like everyone was suddenly standing at the edge of something they couldn't see yet. Clarence finally spoke. "Ms. Jeffers, we'll need additional documents before any decisions can be made. Birth certificate, custody papers, identification. For now, nothing changes today." Monique nodded slowly. "Okay." Jalen looked disappointed, not about the money, but about leaving with no answers. Sterling stood. "If there's anything I can do to help, please let me know." Monique didn't respond right away. She was still processing everything. They walked out of the office together, and the lobby suddenly felt too bright. People weren't staring, but somehow it felt like they were. But the hardest questions were still waiting outside those doors. Outside the bank, the morning had fully settled in. Cars rolled past on Monroe Street, sunlight bouncing off windshields, and the sound of a city waking up felt completely out of place compared to what had just happened inside. Monique pressed her key fob, and the old Honda made a weak beep. Jalen climbed into the back seat without saying anything. Sterling paused near the passenger side, unsure if he should walk away or speak. Monique leaned against the open door, rubbing her forehead. I'm sorry for stepping in back there, Sterling said quietly. I just didn't feel right to walk out. Monique exhaled. We ain't used to folks paying attention unless something's wrong. There wasn't bitterness in her voice, just honesty. Sterling glanced at Jalen through the window. He reminds me of a kid I used to know, smart, but carrying more than people realize. Monique closed the door halfway, leaving it cracked. I don't know what we're supposed to do now. I barely manage what I already got. Sterling nodded slowly. If that trust was real, there will be lawyers involved. Paperwork, a lot of steps. Don't let anyone rush you. Monique eyed him carefully. Why do you care? Sterling didn't answer right away. His jaw tightened just slightly, not aggressive, more uncomfortable. Because I laughed, he finally said, and sometimes one moment tells you who you are. I don't like the version I saw. Monique stared at him for a few seconds, trying to read his sincerity. Before she could respond, Jalen pushed the door open from the inside. Auntie, can we go? He asked quietly. Yeah, baby, get your seatbelt. Sterling stepped back. If anything comes up, here's my card. He offered it, but Monique hesitated before taking it. She slipped it into her purse without looking at the name again. We'll figure it out, she said, more to herself than to him. Sterling nodded once, then walked toward his black SUV parked a few spaces away. He opened the door, paused, and looked back at them, as if something still bothered him. Then he got in and drove off. Inside the Honda, the silence lingered for several minutes as Monique pulled into traffic. You okay back there? She asked. Jalen stared out the window. Did you know my dad worked for that man? No, Monique answered softly. I ain't know nothing about where he ended up. Jalen turned toward her reflection in the rearview mirror. Did Mom know? Monique's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Your mama didn't talk about him, not because she was hiding anything. She just moved forward. Sometimes that's the only way to survive. Jalen pushed his glasses up. If he had money, why didn't he help us? Monique's voice cracked the tiniest bit. I don't have that answer. They stopped at a red light. A group of kids crossed the street wearing backpacks larger than their bodies, laughing like school was the last place they wanted to be. Jalen watched them until they disappeared. Everybody gonna find out, huh? He asked. About the money? Monique shook her head. No, we not telling nobody. But what if they do? Monique looked at him in the mirror again. Listen to me. You are the same kid you were an hour ago. Don't let a number on a screen change how you see yourself. Jalen didn't respond. His fingers tapped lightly against the strap of his backpack. They pulled into the parking lot of their apartment complex, a cluster of beige buildings with peeling paint and a playground missing half its swings. Monique parked and took a deep breath. We ain't saying nothing about today until we know what's real, she reminded him. Jalen nodded and opened the door slowly. As they walked toward their unit, their neighbor, Mr. Tyson Green, waved from his balcony. Morning, Monique. You still coming to the community meeting later? Monique forced a smile. Probably not today, Mr. Green. Got stuff to handle. He shrugged. All right. Let me know if you need anything. When they stepped inside the apartment, the familiar smell of laundry detergent and last night's spaghetti sauce wrapped around them. It was small, but it was home. Jalen dropped his backpack on the couch and sat beside it. Auntie, he said quietly, what if he didn't leave because he didn't care? What if something happened to him? Monique froze. She hadn't considered that. I don't know, she admitted, but maybe we should try to find out. Jalen looked up, eyes steady. I want to know who he was. Monique sighed, sitting beside him. Okay, we'll start with what we got. But neither of them had any idea how many doors that simple decision was about to open. Monique didn't plan on going anywhere else that day, but her mind wouldn't let her sit still. After Jalen settled at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal, she pulled out the folder of papers that had been left behind after his mother passed. Most of it was hospital forms, school records, and unopened mail, but buried near the bottom was something she didn't remember seeing before. A faded envelope with no return address. Her hands paused. Jalen noticed. What's that? He asked, lifting his spoon halfway. I don't know, Monique murmured. It must have been mixed in with your mama's things. She opened it carefully so the paper inside didn't tear. A single sheet, typed, no signature, just one line that made her chest tighten. If anything happens, Contact attorney Raymond Kellis in Columbus. Jalen leaned forward. Who's that? I never heard of him, Monique said, but her voice wasn't steady. She grabbed her phone and typed the name. His law office popped up instantly, real, active, and not the kind of place everyday folks walked into without a reason. You think we should call him? Jalen asked. Monique didn't answer right away. Calling a stranger about $2.4 million felt like walking into traffic. She took a breath. Let me think first, she said. We don't want to rush nothing. But thinking didn't make the wait go away. Before she could decide, there was a knock at the door. 3 quick taps. Jalen's eyes widened. Who is that? Monique stood, suddenly alert. They weren't expecting anyone. She checked the peephole and felt her stomach drop. Sterling. She opened the door halfway. What are you doing here? Sterling looked uncomfortable, which was surprising for someone who usually seemed so sure of himself. I know this is unexpected. I shouldn't have come without calling. Then why did you? Monique asked, not moving aside. He held up a folded paper. I went back to my office and called someone who worked with me during the project I mentioned. They confirmed something I didn't know earlier. Dorian didn't just disappear. He left after an accident. Jalen appeared beside Monique, peeking around her arm. What kind of accident? Sterling hesitated. A serious one. Someone got hurt on the job site. Dorian was questioned, but he wasn't charged. After that, he was gone. Monique narrowed her eyes. You're telling me this now. Why? Sterling exhaled slowly. Because if that money came from somewhere he didn't earn legally, you need to be prepared. And if it was legitimate, someone might still have information you need. Monique stepped outside and closed the door behind her so Jalen couldn't hear every word. Look, she said firmly, I appreciate the concern, but you don't know us, and we don't know you. Sterling nodded. You're right, but I also know what happens when families with no experience get thrown into something this big. People start showing up. People who shouldn't. Monique's pulse picked up. Are you saying we're in danger? I don't know, Sterling admitted. I just didn't want to ignore it. For the first time, Monique saw something different in him. Not pity, not guilt, worry. She lowered her voice. We found a note. Someone told my sister to contact an attorney in Columbus. Sterling looked surprised. That means she knew something. Maybe she didn't tell you because she thought she could handle it alone. Monique swallowed hard. We need answers. Sterling nodded. If you want, I can drive you there tomorrow. I know you don't trust me, and that's fair. But I'm offering help, not control. Monique didn't agree right away. She crossed her arms and stared at the pavement. If I say yes, she said, we do this on my terms. Of course, Sterling replied. From inside the apartment, Jalen pressed his face to the window, watching them talk. He couldn't hear their words, but he could feel the shift, like something had already changed. Monique finally opened the door a little. We'll think about it. Sterling gave a small nod. Let me know. He walked down the steps, but halfway to his car, he turned back. Monique, he said quietly, whatever this is, it didn't start today. It just finally reached you. She didn't respond. After he left, Monique locked the door, leaned against it, and closed her eyes. Jalen stood in the hallway, waiting. What did he say? He whispered. Monique forced a steady voice. Nothing we can't handle. But her hands were still shaking. But the first person they planned to call wasn't the last person who would find out. Monique didn't sleep that night. She lay on the couch staring at the ceiling while the refrigerator clicked on and off in the kitchen. Around 6 in the morning, she sat up, rubbed her face, and made a decision before her mind could talk her out of it. They were going to Columbus. Jalen walked into the room wearing pajama pants and rubbing his eyes. You're up early. Monique managed a tired smile. We got somewhere to be. He blinked. Today? Yeah. Get dressed. Eat something quick. She didn't explain more than that, and Jalen didn't push. He just nodded and went to his room. An hour later, the Honda rolled out of the parking lot. The sky was gray, not stormy, just heavy. Jalen stared at the passing exits while Monique kept both hands tight on the wheel. You nervous? He asked quietly. A little, she admitted. You? Jalen shrugged. Kind of feels like we're going to the principal's office. Monique let out a weak laugh. Yeah, something like that. They pulled into North High Street just before 10. The law office was in a tall glass building, nothing loud or flashy, just the kind of place where people walked fast and didn't look at each other. Monique checked the address 3 times before parking. Inside the lobby, the air smelled like coffee and furniture polish. A receptionist looked up from her desk with a polite smile. "Good morning, do you have an appointment?" Monique cleared her throat. No, we're here to see attorney Raymond Kellis. It's important." The receptionist typed quickly. "Name, please?" "Monique Jeffers, and this is my nephew, Jalen Reddick." The woman paused. Something in the name seemed to register, but she didn't react. "One moment." She made a call, speaking quietly, then hung up. "Mr. Kellis will see you shortly. Please have a seat." Monique and Jalen sat on a leather couch that made a soft sound every time they moved. Jalen whispered, "Do you think he already knows why we're here?" "I don't know," Monique replied. After a few minutes, a man appeared in the doorway, mid-50s, silver hair, neat suit. His expression wasn't surprised, more like someone who had been waiting for this. "Ms. Jeffers, Jalen?" he said. They stood. "Come in," he added gently. "I've been expecting you." Jalen shot Monique a look, expecting them. They followed him into a corner office with tall windows and shelves filled with thick binders. He closed the door. "I'm sorry for your loss," Raymond said, taking a seat. "Your sister was an exceptional woman." Monique's eyebrows lifted. "You knew her?" "Yes," he replied. "She contacted me years ago regarding the trust." Monique's voice shook. "Then why didn't anyone tell us about the money?" Raymond folded his hands. "Your sister requested privacy. She intended to finalize the paperwork when her health improved. Unfortunately, she never returned." Jalen leaned forward. "Did you know my father?" Raymond hesitated. "Only through documents. I never met him in person." Monique took the faded envelope from her purse. "This note said to contact you if something happened." Raymond nodded slowly. She left that because she didn't want Jalen to grow up wondering where he stood in the world. She planned to tell him when he was older. Jalen stared at the floor. Why didn't she say anything before she got sick? Raymond paused. Sometimes parents carry pain they don't want their children to inherit. Monique wiped her eyes with the corner of her sleeve. "Do you know where Dorian is now?" Raymond reached into a drawer and pulled out a manila folder. "He was living in Zanesville for a time," he said. "Then the trail stops. No forwarding address, no employment records." Monique frowned. "So he might be gone?" "Possibly," Raymond answered. "But there's something else you need to understand. The money didn't come from Dorian's personal income." Jalen's head snapped up. "Then where?" Raymond opened the folder. "An insurance settlement," he said, "connected to the construction accident Mr. Hawthorne mentioned." Monique froze. "You're telling me someone got hurt and the money came from that?" "Yes," Raymond confirmed. "Dorian was not responsible, but he was involved as a witness. The settlement was placed in Jalen's name at Dorian's request." Jalen swallowed. "So he tried to do something good?" "It appears so," Raymond murmured, "but we need proper verification before anything moves forward." Monique took a slow breath. "What do we do now?" Raymond looked at both of them. "You let me handle the legal side," he said, "and you prepare yourselves, because once this becomes official, people who never noticed you before will start paying attention." Jalen's voice was barely above a whisper. "Is that bad?" "Not always," Raymond replied, "but it can change your life in ways you don't expect." Monique nodded, even though she didn't feel ready for any of it. They stood to leave, and Raymond walked them to the door. "If anything worries you," he added, "you call me immediately." Monique squeezed Jalen's hand as they walked back into the hallway, but they didn't realize someone else had already found out they were in Columbus. The elevator doors closed, but Monique still felt like the walls were moving. Jalen stood close to her, clutching the strap of his backpack again. When they reached the lobby, she forced a calm expression and thanked the receptionist before guiding Jalen outside. The air felt colder than when they arrived. Monique unlocked the car, but before getting in, she noticed a black sedan parked across the street. The driver wasn't looking their way, at least not openly, but something about the stillness made her uneasy. She tried to ignore it and helped Jalen into his seat. "Can we get food on the way home?" Jalen asked softly. "Yeah," Monique replied, starting the engine. "We'll stop somewhere." Her voice didn't match the reassurance she was trying to give. As they pulled out of the parking lot, she checked the rearview mirror. The black sedan stayed where it was, not following, just sitting there. She told herself she was being dramatic. The drive out of Columbus was quiet. Too quiet for a kid who normally filled car rides with questions. Jalen stared at the window like the world outside didn't make sense anymore. "What are you thinking about?" Monique finally asked. He shrugged. "If my dad tried to help me, why didn't he stay?" Monique gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. People make choices that don't match what's in their heart. Jalen thought about that. So he wasn't bad? "I don't know," Monique said softly. "Sometimes being gone hurts worse than anything else." They turned off onto a smaller road. A moment later, Jalen sat up straighter. "Auntie, that's the same car from the building." Monique's chest tightened as she checked the mirror. The black sedan was several cars behind them. She forced her voice steady. Could just be going the same direction. Jalen didn't look convinced. A few minutes later, the sedan changed lanes. For a second, Monique relaxed, until she realized it hadn't passed them. It stayed behind. Not close, not far, just there. Monique's mouth went dry. She didn't want to scare Jalen, but fear showed itself anyway. "Put your seatbelt tight," she said quietly. "We already got seatbelts," Jalen replied, confused. "I know, just do it." He clicked it tighter without arguing. Monique took the next exit, not the one she normally used. If the car followed, she would know. She signaled, turned onto a side road near a row of small shops, and waited. The black sedan stayed on the highway. Jalen let out a shaky breath. "They're not following us." Monique nodded, though it didn't ease the knot in her stomach. "See? Probably nothing." But she didn't believe her own words. They stopped at a small diner off West Broad Street. Inside, the smell of bacon and pancakes greeted them, and the sound of plates clinking made the world feel normal again, at least for the moment. A waitress named Tanya Briggs brought menus and smiled warmly at Jalen. "What can I get for you, sweetheart?" Jalen hesitated. "Do you have waffles?" "We sure do," she said. "Best ones in town." Jalen gave a small smile. It was the first one Monique had seen all day. While they waited for the food, Monique's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have gone to Columbus." Her hand froze above the table. Jalen noticed instantly. "Who's that?" Monique locked the screen. "Nobody. Spam message." But her voice shook just enough for Jalen to know it wasn't true. He leaned closer. "Are we in trouble?" Monique forced herself to speak slowly. "We're not in trouble. We're just dealing with something bigger than we thought." The waitress returned with their plates, breaking the tension for a moment. Jalen took a bite, but his attention stayed on Monique. "You're scared," he whispered. Monique closed her eyes briefly. "I'm not scared of the money. I'm scared of the unknown." Jalen looked down at his plate. "I don't like secrets." "I know," Monique said gently. "Me neither." Before they left, Monique stepped outside to call Raymond. He answered on the first ring. "Did something happen?" he asked. Monique kept her voice low. "We got a text. Someone knows we came." Raymond didn't sound surprised. "That didn't take long." "You knew this might happen?" she asked sharply. "I knew people talk," he replied. "Do not respond to any messages, and when you get home, call me again." Monique's pulse thudded in her ears. "Is Jalen safe?" "Yes," Raymond said firmly, "but you need to stay alert." Monique hung up and opened the car door, forcing a steady breath. Jalen buckled himself in without being told. On the drive home, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to, but someone else was already waiting for them long before they pulled into the parking lot. By the time they reached the apartment complex, the sun was lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Monique slowed the car, scanning the area without making it obvious. Nothing looked out of place. Kids kicking a soccer ball near the sidewalk, a woman carrying groceries up the stairs, laundry hanging from a balcony. Normal. Too normal. She parked near their building and turned off the engine, but her hands stayed on the wheel. "You ready to go inside?" she asked. Jalen nodded, though his eyes stayed fixed on the stairwell. They stepped out of the car. The air was warm, but Monique felt a chill along her arms anyway. She unlocked the apartment door and gently nudged Jalen inside first, checking the hallway before closing it behind them. Everything was exactly the way they left it, except for one thing. A white envelope on the floor, not from the mail slot. Someone had slipped it under the door. Monique picked it up slowly, her fingers trembling. Jalen stood close enough to touch her elbow. "What is it?" he whispered. She didn't answer. She opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. It showed Dorian standing outside a small house, holding a toddler who had Jalen's same eyes. On the back, written in pen, "You're looking in the wrong places." Monique's breath caught. The room felt smaller. Jalen leaned in. "That's him?" Monique nodded. "Yeah, that's your daddy." Jalen's voice was barely a sound. "He was holding me." Monique closed her eyes. "I didn't know this picture existed." There was another line written beneath the first. Zanesville wasn't the end. Monique grabbed her phone and snapped a picture of the message. "I need to call Raymond." Jalen sat on the couch, staring at the photograph like it might break if he blinked. Raymond answered on the second ring. "Tell me what happened." "There was an envelope under our door," Monique said quietly. "Someone knows where we live." "How many people have keys to your building?" "Too many," Monique replied. "But that's not the part that scares me. The message said we're looking in the wrong places." Raymond paused. "That means someone wants to redirect you. Could be a warning. Could be manipulation." "How do we tell the difference?" Monique asked. "We don't. Not yet," Raymond said. "But you need to take Jalen somewhere safe for the night." Monique's pulse kicked up. "Safe? Like a hotel?" "No," Raymond said. "Somewhere familiar, but not predictable." "Do you have family nearby?" Monique closed her eyes. "My cousin lives in Lima, but we haven't talked in years." "That's better than staying where someone has already been," Raymond replied. "Leave within the hour. Call me when you arrive." She hung up and turned toward Jalen. "Pack a bag," she said softly. He looked up slowly. "Are we running away?" Monique crouched in front of him. "No, we're being careful. There's a difference." Jalen nodded, though uncertainty clouded his face. He went to his room and gathered clothes into his backpack, the same one with the loose thread. Monique packed too, moving fast but trying not to look frantic. She grabbed documents, her phone charger, and the folded envelope. Her hands shook each time she tried to zip the bag. Before they walked out the door, Jalen stopped at the hallway mirror. "Auntie," he said. "Yeah?" "If Dad tried to protect me, why would someone want to scare us?" Monique swallowed hard. "I don't know yet, but we're going to find out." She switched off the lights and opened the door. Just as they stepped outside, someone called her name. "Monique?" She turned. Sterling stood at the bottom of the stairs, hands in his pockets, looking like he hadn't moved from that spot for a while. "What are you doing here?" Monique asked, startled. "I came to check on you," Sterling replied. "Something felt off after you left Columbus." Monique stared at him, unsure whether to be relieved or alarmed. "How did you even know where we live?" "You gave me your address on the bank forms," he said simply. Jalen held his backpack straps tight. "Did you leave the envelope?" Sterling looked confused. "What envelope?" Monique studied his face. He didn't seem to be lying. "We don't have time to explain," she said. "We need to go." Sterling stepped forward. "Let me follow you, just to make sure you get where you're going." Monique hesitated. Jalen watched her silently. Finally, she nodded. "Stay behind us. No questions. No surprises." "Agreed," Sterling said. They walked to the Honda. Sterling returned to his SUV. As Monique pulled out of the parking lot, she checked the mirror. Sterling's vehicle followed at a distance. Jalen looked out the window, holding the photograph tight against his chest. But leaving the apartment wasn't the part they needed to worry about. It was who was already waiting at their next stop. The drive toward Lima was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that comes from peace. More like everyone was holding their breath at the same time. The sun had already dipped low, turning the road into long stretches of orange and shadow. Monique kept her eyes forward, checking the mirrors every few seconds. Sterling stayed several car lengths behind, just like he promised. Jalen held the photograph in his lap, tracing the outline of his father's face with his thumb. "Do you think he wanted us to find him?" he asked softly. Monique didn't answer right away. "I think he wanted you to have a chance at a different life." Jalen leaned his forehead against the window. "Then why didn't he stay for it?" Monique sighed. "Sometimes people think disappearing is the only choice they have. Doesn't make it right." The GPS led them into a neighborhood lined with single-story houses and mailboxes that leaned a little from years of weather. Her cousin, Tasha Branson, lived at the end of the street, in a blue-sided house with a porch swing and a yard full of toys. They pulled into the driveway. Before Monique even got out of the car, the front door opened. Tasha stepped outside wearing sweatpants and holding a baby monitor. Her eyebrows lifted in surprise. Monique? Girl, is that really you? Monique forced a smile. Yeah, it's been a minute. Tasha came down the steps and hugged her without hesitation. You okay? You sound weird on the phone. Monique swallowed.